If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and so many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Why not start today? Hello, everyone. This is Kelly Finley, and you are listening to I Am. This month, I am self-sufficient, and today I have our Beck from AES Solar to talk about solar energy, living off-grid, and how to be more energy efficient. Hi, Or.
Good.
How are you? It's been a minute, my friend.
Yeah. Let me know if the birds are too loud. I'm sitting in my backyard and there's a baby bird nest up in the porch about 10 feet from me.
Oh, I think that'll be lovely. I'm sitting in my truck because my house is full.
Just like,
All right.
so,
Well, thank you so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate it.
yeah. All right.
So I'm really focusing on self-sufficiency this month. And so we've covered gardening. I'm going to be covering homeschooling. And I think with everything that's been going on, especially people are really taking more of an interest in how to be self-sufficient and sustainable. So I wanted to ask you, what is your self-sufficiency story? How and why did you start getting into solar?
Did you happen to read my blog?
I did.
So did you happen to catch the last one where I wrote how to live without toilet paper?
I did, yes.
It's like this whole pandemic actually got me writing again because I actually haven't written and gone back over my upbringing for probably a year. I got into it writing a regular blog and just like wanting to put down my thoughts of how I grew up, and then got super busy and didn't until recently, write a new blog. And I suppose it's been a month and I probably should write another one. But essentially my dad decided to, in his, like, I guess, what do you call it, midlife crisis, to disconnect from society and try to live extremely simply. In his first half of his life, he was very much a very rich, and I wouldn't say rich and prominent, but living the upper middle class life, right?
Okay.
And then he decided to drop out of society, and in the process, he met my mom, and in the process, they had me as the firstborn kid, and I got to grow up completely off grid. I mean, we have lived in, by the time I was 20, we lived in 34 states and 3 countries.
Wow.
And the 34 states in the U.S. predominantly traveled by horse-drawn wagon.
Oh my gosh. I remember years ago you telling me that. Yeah.
It's like, so essentially I grew up kind of with the, gypsy parents who just traveled. Now, mind you, we tended to go back to either Tennessee or Alabama in the winters, just because, I don't know, isn't that what rich people do? They like go south in the winter,
right,
and then go north. So we were like migrating birds, where we tended to. So most of the time I grew up, I didn't really have like bad winters because we tended to live in the South.
Mm-hmm.
I only remember one winter I feel like we were in Connecticut that we had snow until later in life. Then we had one winter in North Dakota, but otherwise
What
mostly lived to the south.
what prompted your dad to make that huge change?
Um, Actually, supposedly the story goes is he went to the Indian reservation to um my we call him my great great grandfather, Anita.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and grandfather said, if you want to learn your like to be one with the world and be peaceful, you need to walk the Trail of Tears.
Wow. Okay.
And so that's supposedly was the first trip when I was 9 months old. Got a horse and started walking the Trail of Tears,
Oh
and
my
it
God.
just became about a 20-year I wouldn't say odyssey, but um, spiritual journey, definitely. I mean, my dad and mom chose to live simply.
Mm-hmm.
And when we, um, basically, when my dad retired, he retired to a job in a place.
Wow.
And
Opposite of what a lot of people do.
right, that was kind of the idea was he was like,
Yeah.
while I'm young and healthy, I'll do what most people want to do, which is travel
Mm-hmm.
and not hope I save up enough money to travel. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, my mother studied under a medicine man for herbs, and we would live in the South, and so I grew up. Dad called us Technicolor Amish, in that, I mean, our wagon was literally so a Cadillac axles. There were Cadillac axles, so it had rubber tires,
Oh
but it
wow.
was the axles from a Cadillac, and that was the bottom of our wagon. And but yeah, we'd go back to Tennessee and um, you know, set up in the winter, and then usually sometimes stay in the spring and have a garden. Um, we didn't travel all the time. I mean, sometimes it'd be only 3 months of the year we'd go on a trip somewhere, but definitely grew up extremely simple and low tech. And in the process, I had someone give me it was either a 2 watt or a 3 watt little solar panel. It was about, I don't know, maybe 6 inches square.
Mm-hmm.
And I used that to hook up to, actually, before that, I had been to an energy fair where I saw someone have a solar electric panel hooked to a fan. And so basically the light of the sun was producing electricity and turning this fan motor. So it was
Mm-hmm.
basically the the more intense the sun was, the faster the fan was turning, the more it cooled me off. It was like this magic.
How
And
old were you?
um probably 13 or 14, because I bought my first big solar panel when I was 15.
Wow. And
I
you've been doing it ever since, yeah?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I actually saved up. So living in one of the poorest counties in Tennessee, there wasn't much work for money. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that got traded. A lot of people
Mm-hmm.
did trading, but there wasn't much money. But I was bound and determined that, like, I was going to buy a solar panel because, um, and I worked like every little job I could that summer, including, you know what sucker and backer is?
Mm-mm. No.
Okay, backer is Southern for tobacco.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay, and to grow tobacco, someone has to go into the field and break off all the little shoots to make the bigger leaves grow bigger.
Right.
So
Okay.
physically, you have to go out in there and and so it was one of the few crops that they made like decent amount of money from. So people would get paid to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I hated using gloves, so I went out there and spent a whole day suckering backer, and my hands got all coated with this tar, like this black goop, and of course that's nicotine. And
Right.
I spent like 3 days, the highest and the sickest I've ever been in my life.
Oh, wow.
And I highly recommend that because I have never touched nicotine since then. I was just like, that was horrible. Um, what was another job? The one I actually made the most money at was picking pimento peppers. They paid by the pound, but somehow I don't like most of the jobs I did were like very menial labor, and somehow I still saved up almost $400 to buy my first solar panel.
Yeah, I was going to ask how much that first solar panel was.
So let's see, if it was 35 watt, that was like $12 a watt. And now you can buy one for like 30 cents a watt.
Wow.
Just like, but that was,
Wow.
what was that? 91, I think. It's like 90 or 91. And I still have it. It's still hooked up um, out at my farm in Pomona, but um, what do you call it? Well, wouldn't say hooked up. It's still there, but I haven't like kept the batteries maintained and stuff. So I I actually would have to confess that I don't really live off grid now.
Yeah.
I lived off grid for 18 years, and then I realized that I was advocating for people to live off grid, yet I was driving at least an hour a day, sometimes 2 hours a day if I had two meetings to town. And I was just like, so what if I get my electricity from solar if everything else in my life not? And so um I ended up slowly moving to town, and now I actually live right in the middle of downtown,
Oh, really?
which sounds horrible, but I mean, I'm completely surrounded by trees, my little teeny piece of property. Um, and I've got the whole front yard is full of fruit trees, and I got a little garden, but
Oh, lovely. Now, is your house there on solar?
it is. But the house I bought is again completely surrounded by trees, so I
Hmm.
only had enough sunny spot on the house to do about 25 to 30% of the electric usage. But it's it's actually two houses, and I rent out one house. And so the reason why I say 25 to 30% is because the renters are on the same meter.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, if I have someone move in who's not energy conscious, it might drop to only, you know, the solar system only produces a certain amount, and it's dependent on what people's energy habits are.
Right.
So my house is actually 300 square feet, and so which is possibly why I'm sitting in my yard.
Right. That's small.
But
That is small.
I mean, you meet anybody from New York, and they're like, "Man, that's like twice the size of my apartment."
Oh, sure. It's totally perspective. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
Well, can you tell us some benefits of, converting over to solar? Can you get benefits if you don't do the entire house? Can you break that down a little bit for us?
okay. Well, there's two types of solar systems, really.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to really be simplistic, there's the grid tie systems, which basically alleviate your energy usage. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, like my mom, she has 4 solar panels on her house, and um, with with it being grid intertie, some months it produces more than her house needs, and then she has a credit for another month. Um, and then some months it doesn't produce as much, and then she's got that credit saved up. Um,
Now you're in Illinois. Do you know if that's pretty standard for most states now?
it's not standard for states nor utilities.
Okay.
So, like where I live, we have um, what 2 utilities that have what they call standard net metering. Mean if you turn the meter backwards, they give you a 1-to-1 credit. Then we have some co-ops who, if you turn the meter backwards, they'll still give you a credit, but it'll be at wholesale.
Okay.
And so it's not as good. Um, and that brings up the other kind of solar system, which would be instead of a straight grid tie, it would be one with batteries.
Right. Okay.
A straight grid tie system doesn't need batteries unless you
Okay.
want a backup power system. So, meaning if the utility quits working, you still have basically like a backup generator.
Okay.
But a standard grid tie system shuts off if the utility shuts off. It only works. Now, off grid, you have to have batteries. You have to have some way to store the energy. You don't
Right.
have a choice. When I design a complete off grid system, the batteries are one of the more expensive parts of the system. Um, but if people are solely looking at like making money off of solar, then they have to do
Mm-hmm.
just the straight grid tie because it's just basically, I mean, if your electricity is super cheap, a solar system might not have a good payback. I mean, most people buy
Okay.
solar now for, well, for making money. I mean, um, but the majority of states have some type of what they call net metering policy. And net metering means you get a like a 1-to-1, you turn the meter backwards, and instead of them paying you, they just basically give you uh, energy credit. It's basically like the concept of rollover minutes, with the cell phone.
Right.
You get you turn the meter back 1 kilowatt, and now you have 1 kilowatt for later use. Um, the reason why solar is so popular in California is
Mm-hmm.
they actually pay extra for when you turn the meter backwards with solar.
Oh.
And, and that's because they have a shortage of electricity. So they're like, you're gonna pay to put the solar system on. Well, we'll pay you for the electricity it produces. And so,
I know for a while, I guess it's been several years, but there were different incentives to get people to switch over to
mhm.
solar. Is that still happening, or is that kind of phased out with the latest administration?
It is being phased out. On the federal level right now, we have it was for quite a few years a 30% tax credit. At the
Yeah, I remember that.
beginning of
Yeah.
this year, it went down to 26%, and then next year it'll be 22%, and then the year after that it'll be zero.
Oh, wow.
And so that's the federal tax credit. And then, different states, different utilities um, have different local incentives. I mean, um, like the state of Illinois has a great incentive that also pays for another 20 to 25% of the system cost. So, um, That's right now. It's kind of, well, last year was like the ultimate peak as far as state incentives in my area.
Okay.
But right now it's 4% less than it was last year, so it's still pretty phenomenal.
So for people like I'm in
Hmm.
Tennessee, and so for people in different states, what is a good resource for them to look that up and see if there are some incentives to switching over to solar?
Okay, so the the Solar Energy Center has a website. It's Desire USA, but let's see, DSIREUSA.org. Stands for the
Okay.
Database of State Incentives in Renewable Energy in the USA. But
Okay.
it's
Nice.
like desire, but with no E in the beginning. So,
Okay.
and it has, you click on federal, it shows federal. You click on state, it shows state, and it'll show like individual utilities. Like, I used to install in 8 states, and I've installed a few in Tennessee, and we did one. Um, what? It was on a co-op, but we actually had to do the utility contract with TVA because they're the ones that provide the electricity. So
Right.
by us putting a solar system on, it made it so TVA would sell a little less electricity, but also it made it so that it props most utilities are pro solar because electricity takes usually on average about 150 miles from where it's produced to where it's used. And so they got this whole power grid. And by putting little solar systems all over the grid, it props up the grid and the grid stays more stable. And
Mm-hmm.
so they really like small little solar systems especially in remote areas because the grid tends to be unstable way out at the end of the power lines.
Makes sense.
So, but I've been surprised. I've been installing solar for almost 21 years. June 4th will be 21 years. And we've been doing a lot of off-grid systems, like completely disconnected from the utilities. And that's how I started 20 years ago. And it just people bought, beautiful, nice properties and don't have access to the utility. So it's
There has been, and I actually have a friend who just bought an RV, and there's been this trend lately for I don't know, I guess several years, and I've looked at it
mm-hmm,
myself of people kind of doing the same thing that your dad did and saying, you know what, I don't want to wait until I'm older. I want to go travel now, and so they're going and doing living full time in an RV. And I have a friend that just bought one, and she is looking to get the RV all hooked up for
mm-hmm.
solar. What would you suggest how to start a project like that?
Well, there's two things. Um, because it is an RV, you have the backup generator essentially of the motor of the RV.
Right.
So and but then you also have the limitation of space to put solar. So you're honestly not going to be put enough solar to be completely self-powered. But by
Okay.
having the backup generator or just if it's like a small van RV, it's just the actual motor of the when it's driving, it charges the batteries.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, you're going to put as much solar as you can on the roof. You'll never have enough space to do completely, but
Mm-hmm.
um, you'll be surprised what you can do because especially if it's um, a lot of RVs are dual wired, meaning they're wired for DC power and for AC power. And all the DC power stuff is low voltage, low power consumption. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, an example is I used to have, a full desktop computer. Then I went to a laptop. Then I went to a tablet, and now I've just got, a cell phone. And each time I did that, my energy consumption went down, and the ability to do the same things are still there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I can now, with a cell phone and a very small solar panel, be powered up for long periods of time. Um,
How do you go about finding how much you're going to need to produce?
okay. There's two ways. The proper way is very hard because it's based on personal habits. So let's just take
Okay.
one light bulb. Pick that light bulb in your living room and tell me how many hours a week do you run that one light bulb?
Okay.
Okay. See how hard it is? We just talking about one light bulb.
Right.
So that's the proper
Right.
thing, is to make a list of everything that uses energy, and then how many hours a week does it use? And then you times that by how many watts, and that tells you how many watt hours a week you need. What honestly, my first solar system, I did it, I guess you could say, ass backwards. I was like, how much solar can I afford? And now let's see what I can run. And that,
I think a lot of people start that way. Honestly.
I mean,
Let me get this solar panel, and then I can do this, and then I'll just add
the
on.
problem is if you completely do that, it can make it kind of hard to expand it if you don't, plan it. I mean, example for me, I did that exact same thing. I bought the solar module, and then just used the battery I had sitting around, and probably in a couple months I fried the battery. Um, and then I saved up enough money to buy a charge controller, and then I bought a proper battery, and then I just kept um, building on the system. But I did it in such a hodgepodge way that, I don't know, probably 5 years into it, I completely stripped the whole system down and started over, with proper design. And all of a sudden I was getting like 20% more power out of my system. Um,
Wow. So that was the hard way, is figuring out, how long do I keep that light bulb on? Is there an easier way
well, I'm,
to kind of get a roundabout
I
figure?
mean, the easy way is, you buy what you can, and then you run within your limitations. So basically, the old saying, make hay while the sun shines. Well, when the sun's shining, you have more electricity, then you can use more things. So I had
Mm-hmm.
a off the grid customer who lived out near Garden of the Gods, and that's what they did, is they basically put a small solar system in, um, and when the sun was shining and they were cranking out the power, for example, they would crank up the tunes and vacuum the house and like do a few extra things. Like um, in their case, they didn't have a wash machine, but I have another off grid client who does that. When the sun's really shining, they have extra electricity, so they'll run extra laundry. And then, of course, because it's sunny, they go hang it up outside. The
Gotcha.
ultimate old
Okay.
school technology. I actually had a friend who lived off grid in northern Michigan, and every year we would meet up in Wisconsin at the Midwest Renewable Energy Fair, and he would pay for his gas money from Michigan there by selling fusion powered clothes dryers. And all it was like a sheet of instructions, a clothesline, and some clothespins. and it was just like, and he would sell out every year. I mean, like, but like, yeah, I
That's
mean, it was just like
hilarious.
people were just like, oh, this is great, like I can like fusion powered clothes dryer, and I mean, it was just, and it had the instructions how to tie up the clothesline and use these clothespins, and it just like, and then of course, I mean, he was funny too, so,
Wow.
but
Right.
um, but yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example. Him and I would do an off-grid workshop. I would talk about living in the South, and he would talk about living in the North, like but living in lots of snow in the winter, completely off-grid up there. He would have, a couple months of no sun, and then down south, I would have a couple months of lots of sun, and then I would need a high energy demand. Like I'd have to run a dehumidifier to cool the house. I never had enough
Mm-hmm.
off grid. I never had enough electricity to actually run an air conditioner. But
Okay.
I do have customers now. I mean, but back then, I mean, I didn't run tons of stuff, but um, it was mostly, lights and music and TV and entertainment in my office. So mostly electronics.
Yeah, so it kind of sounds like the theme here is some sort of marriage between figuring out what do you absolutely have to have and what are some things that maybe I don't need or I can do a different way as far as creating a whole, energy efficient
True.
package.
I mean, like right now, I don't completely live off grid, but even with two roommates, um, I don't think our electric bill has ever been over $150. Um, Usually, like this month, it was 115. Um, and it'll actually go down because now the leaves are coming out on the trees. And so, like last month was one of my highest production months of the year because it's like sunny and no leaves on the trees. Um, Now,
Right.
when I design a system for someone else, I do a shade analysis, and if if my house was a client's house, I would not put solar on it. It just there's too much shading. Um,
Right.
it's but I was just like I can't be a solar person and have no solar on my
No solar, right?
house. Just like, man, that bird has a big piece of something for the babies.
I can hear it. Yeah.
I was just like, um, but yeah, I mean the the average off-grid person only uses 40% of the energy of an on-grid person. That's like uh, a statistic I've
Wow.
heard. Now, um, it just, I mean, you can run everything. It just, you know, how much solar do you want to put in? Um, well, what's a rule of thumb I've heard multiple times is for every dollar you spend on energy efficiency, you will save $3 to $8 on your solar system. So if you can figure out, like example is instead of having a desktop computer, if you had a tablet, it would use a lot less energy. I mean, um,
Right.
yeah, I just read a statistic that we're actually right now. You would think with everybody staying at home, the energy usage would greatly drop, but you know,
I would think it would go up
um,
actually.
well,
because everybody is home, and so they've got, all the lights are on,
Right.
they're on their phones
But
or on their
they
computers,
were
they're
doing all that
doing,
at work before. Yeah. So
well,
the thing
yeah.
is, the energy usage has gone up, or no, I mean, has pretty much stayed the same because energy usage at home has gone up, but energy use at work and school has not really gone down because they haven't completely shut those places off.
Oh, okay.
I do expect that to be the case now because a lot of people thought it was just going to be a very short term thing. But, like a
Right.
smart business would turn back their thermostat. Um, what did I remember reading? They said for every 1 degree you turn your thermostat back for 8 hours, you save 3% on your electric bill per month. So it's like,
Oh, wow.
yeah, I
That
mean,
adds
if you
up.
just, you know, turn your thermostat back a few degrees, um, like, I mean, I have at the office, we have one of those smart programmable thermostats. So I can actually, you know, turn it off almost completely from my phone. And so, like, you know, in the winter on the weekends when I'm not in the office, I might let it drop to like 60 degrees. Who cares? You know, but
Hmm.
yeah.
So what are some tips that you have for people who are interested in converting to solar? Like maybe 3 to 5 tips that you can point people
Huh.
to take a look at.
Well, I mean, are you talking about energy efficiency tips or because I mean, the majority of people who are buying solar are wanting to do it to, alleviate or eliminate their electric bill.
Right.
So really, they're what they're looking for is just a pure cost, and the limitation is basically how much space or how much they want to spend up to your
Okay.
annual energy usage. So that I mean, if you can figure out ways to reduce your energy usage, you would need less solar. Um,
Right. So would you say maybe the first tip or the first plan would be sitting down and really getting clear about what is it that you need and how can you, as things are right now, reduce your energy
I guess
usage?
the first question probably would be, why do you want solar? Um, a lot of people
Okay.
have the idea that they want it for emergency power usage. So a lot of people, one of the first
Okay.
questions is like, how much do batteries cost and how often do I have to replace them? Well, again, if you have a
Mm-hmm.
pure grid tie system, you don't need any batteries at all, but it also quits working if the power goes out.
So if you're wanting that for a backup solution, that's not going to be the right
Correct. I would have to
setup.
know, and I can design one, but I would need to know that upfront. And I would say probably about 40% of our customers put in batteries, um, either for backup power systems or, like I said, some of the utilities in our area don't have that net metering where you can turn the meter backwards. So they charge the batteries during the day and then run the house off it at night. And that
Okay.
has like a payback. Um, I mean, the majority of people who buy solar, honestly, in my area, are not buying it for the environment at all. They're buying it solely, well, they're buying it for greenness, but it's green in their pocket. It's,
Right.
and they want to know, you know, what's the warranty, which that's absolutely amazing. The manufacturer gives a 25-year power production warranty. They're just, I
Wow.
mean, there's no moving parts in them. I mean, the solar panels I have, well, my first one I bought new in like late 1990. And then the other ones I bought used. Well, I actually had bought a new one, and I was walking back to my booth at the Midwest Energy Fair, and this guy was like, "Ooh, that's so pretty. Can I trade you these 3 used ones I have?" And he had an RV, and he actually had them mounted on this like little like cart that he hung on the back of his RV because he couldn't fit them on the roof. And so he traded me, and I feel like I got a better deal because even though they were used, it was like twice as much power. And
Oh,
he felt
wow.
like he got a better deal because he could fit it on the roof and permanently mount it on the roof, and he didn't have to bother with, um, you know, unhooking it off the back of it and wheeling it, setting it up every time he parked. But those are, I want to say we're hitting on 40 years old. Let's see. 86. Let's see. 90. 90 would have been 30. So they're 84. 36.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're 36 years old. And so, and yeah, they're still cranking out power, no problem. I mean, um,
So you can definitely, look at this as a pretty stable long-term investment. Once you invest that money in there, the only thing that you're really going to be looking at replacing are the batteries if you have an
correct.
off-grid system. Is that right?
Yeah, off grid with batteries or a backup power system batteries. But yeah, if you don't have any batteries, there's like no moving parts. Um,
And about how long do the batteries
um,
last?
probably the ones we put in standard probably come with a 7-year warranty, but you can buy a 15 or a 20 or even a 40-year warranty battery. Um, a, a lot of like I tend to do the first set of batteries. I call them the trainer set because you do have to take good care of batteries. And so usually,
And what does that
um,
entail? Taking good care of them. What do you need to do? What's the maintenance on
water
that?
them. Like matters how hard you run them. So like how deep you discharge them. They tend to use more
Okay.
water the harder you run them. And so, um, but yeah, I mean, it's weird. I have off-grid customers, but because they've got some type of internet, it could be satellite internet, it could be, um, I forget what it's called. There's an internet that's site to site, or it's just like through the air. I mean, I have one customer who's 5 miles from their internet, and they basically got a little satellite dish at the end of and it shoots a beam like 5 miles through the air, or cellular. Because of the internet, I can actually log into the off-grid system and look it over and check the maintenance, and I don't have to.
Oh, that's
um,
cool.
I have a customer who's about 7 hours away from me in Missouri. They've got this little, it's a hunting cabin, but it's a full-size house, and I can't log into it unless they're there because um, they just bring an internet hotspot out there and then plug the system in
Okay.
there, and then when they're there, I look at it and check it out. And the problem is usually they don't know there's a problem until they show up. in their case.
Right.
So they'll be like, hey, we showed up for a week and the system's not working. All right. I was just like, well, can you hook it to the internet so I can look at it? And yeah, it's kind of funny. But yeah, I mean it's interesting, like the
So,
off-grid living stuff I've been promoting, and you have me mostly talking about, I guess, solar, which is what I, do for a living. But because I grew up living off grid, I
right.
have a myriad of interests. So, like, I haven't been, well, let's see. I went shopping for my mom last Thursday to get her dog some dog food. But I'm trying to think. It's been 6 or 7 weeks since I had to go to the store. I mean, I'm stocked
Oh,
up.
wow.
I don't really have much fresh greens right now. They're just starting to pop up, but otherwise, I don't know. I guess I'm kind of a borderline prepper or self-sufficient crazy. I don't know. But
Well, maybe we'll have to do
just
another
like,
one just on that.
but yeah, I mean,
Just on living off grid and prepping
yeah,
and how
it's
to go
just
about
like,
that.
um, but yeah, I don't know. It's been slightly fun, except the fact that I'm staying home a little too much. But I was like, can you imagine? I don't know, even 10 years ago, having to stay home this much. I mean, we have the ability to stay connected. I mean, you're
Yes.
you're
Oh, that
like,
makes a
right
huge,
now we're
huge
recording
difference.
this over the internet.
Huge.
Like, I'm on my cell phone, It's like I feel like such an old fogey.
Yep, me too.
It's like the ability of stuff to do. I mean, yeah, it's like I
Yeah, I can't, yeah, I think that's a really good point. And people are already going stir crazy, but it would definitely be 10 times worse had this been 10 years ago or 20 years ago, when
just
we
like
were teenagers.
so. But
Yeah. So at least there is that way to connect, and I think we're all pretty
now,
thankful for that.
um, yeah, I mean it is an interesting. Yeah, I mean, like the people who are into energy are like absolutely loving studying this, because in the past, I mean, they said our
Hmm.
system couldn't handle, like, um basically an increase in energy demand and a shift in energy demand and all different stuff. But it's I do think more and more people are buying things that use less and less energy, and therefore our system can handle it better. So
Right. Well, that has been a trend for a while. I haven't seen it quite as much lately, but I know there for a while it's energy efficiency, and there even Tennessee had a lot of incentives to be more energy
right.
efficient that were sponsored by
Well, again,
TVA.
it's cheaper to reduce your energy
So
than
I
to
know
make
that they
more.
had a program.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess that would be, first and foremost, kind of hitting on that again. Whatever people are looking at or trying to decide, the first thing that needs to happen is shoring up what you already have. If you have an older house, make sure that you've got, good insulation and,
I
maybe
would agree
replace the
with the
windows and that
insulation,
kind of thing to make
but
sure
not
that
with
you're
the
not
windows.
leaking.
Okay. Um,
Okay.
Windows and doors, people tend to go to that first, and that's because there's tons and tons of people
Okay.
selling those. Now, you know,
And there's
now
incentives to replace them
if you
too.
do replace them, it will greatly help. But a window on
Okay.
average probably has about a 15-year payback on the energy savings, because no matter how
Okay.
efficient of a window you put in, it is still extremely less than your walls. I mean, the simplest thing
Okay.
to do is put up a thick curtain, and that will be more energy savings than putting a new window in, usually.
Okay.
Or definitely on the north side of the house in winter, put up thick curtains there, and you're not going to lose the heat. On the south side of the house
Okay.
in the summer, you want to have something that reflects the heat out, or have an overhang somehow
Mm-hmm.
to block the sun from getting in your windows. So like low tech
Right.
stuff will save you probably in almost every case more money than completely replacing them. But insulation, oh man,
Okay.
you can one of the quick, cheap, easy ways to check is you can go buy infrared thermometer. They're like look like a little gun, and they're like
Okay.
$25. And just go around and point it at your walls, and just see if there's like a hot spot. I mean, just like if it's like 80 degrees outside, and you point it at your wall, and your wall's 80 degrees, there's no insulation in that wall. I mean, it's just like it's a so. But the
Okay.
absolute easiest way to save energy is to reduce your hot water usage. It could be as simple as
Okay.
turning back the temperature on your water heater. A lot of them come set at
Okay.
140 degrees, and you really only need about 120. What is it? I want to say you want to keep it above 116 for Logeniere's disease. Um, but
Okay.
yeah, all you need is 120 degrees in that. And then if you get a low flow shower head or faucet aerator, you'll greatly reduce your hot water usage. Um,
How do you feel about
I
the
don't know about
newer
newer. The one I have
tankless
in my house
water
is 10 years
heaters?
old. um,
Okay. Well,
basically, yeah.
it's all newfangled technology to
So
me.
basically, think about it. It's like let's use an analogy. Basically, if you're leaving your car running all the time,
Analogy?
so it's warmed up and ready and to jump in and take off. That's what a regular water heater is. Okay, so
Right.
step by step, what you can do is again reduce the temperature on it, put a blanket around it that it'll hold. One thing my mom does is
Okay.
she just found what the breaker was for the water heater, and she'd only turn it on an hour in the morning and an hour at night. Like, that was it until I put a
Oh,
timer on
wow.
it,
Okay.
and then I put an electronic timer on it, and it does that automatically now. Um, so in the morning, standard households, you get up in the morning, you use hot water for an hour, and then in the evening, about an hour. But the next one would be an instantaneous water heater. Like, right now I'm not using hot water. It's not using any energy. Correct.
And that's the
Yeah.
tankless where
Instantaneous or on
it's that.
demand
So
tankless. So yeah, I mean, you take a shower, it's heating the water, but if you're not, it's not using any energy. And then you can actually get them.
have those
You
come
can get
down
them. A
price?
good quality
Go ahead.
one
I'm
will
sorry.
actually test the temperature of the water coming in and heat it to a set temperature going out. So you can actually hook up a solar hot water to it, solar hot water heater to it, and 9.5, 10 months of the year, it costs you nothing because the sun is heating it. So that would be like the next step. But yeah, they're not
Nice.
that
Okay.
easy to find in the U.S. It's very European style. I have one in my house because it's 300 square feet. There's no place I can put it. Well, when I first bought it, it had a water heater in the bathroom, one of the tanked ones, and it took up like, 30% of the bathroom. And now I've
The
just
whole
got one
bathroom, I
that's the
guess.
size of a medicine cabinet on the wall. So, but yeah, I mean, hot water is your biggest annual energy usage. So, yep, if you can reduce that, basically anytime you heat
So that would be the
or
second.
cool with electricity, that's when you're using the most amount of energy. So those are the things, hot water, air conditioning, electric heat, any type of electric stove or refrigerator. Those are all the ones that use the highest energy usage. Yeah. So.
Right. So whatever you get with that, try and making it
Correct. Yep.
as energy efficient as
It's just like
possible.
that higher upfront cost
Okay.
will save you a lot of money in a few years. Yeah. All right.
In the long run. Okay. Great. So, what are some of your favorite resources that you can point people to, books or websites that, if they're wanting to know more about solar, know more about energy efficiency,
Well,
or
I
even
guess you
living
could
off
go to
grid?
my blog, but it doesn't have like so far I've held off on like the energy efficiency and the solar part because I feel like a lot of people are talking about that. So on my living off grid really .com blog website, it's like so far I think I've written, I don't know, 20 or 25 different categories of things, nothing to do with energy unless you count. I think I did one on how to get water. Of course, the Desire USA website for energy efficiency. One fun website is called Energy Hog. I think it's energyhog.org. And they've got two portals. One's for kids and one's for
Okay.
adults. And the kids one, much more fun, got a lot of games in it. As far as like energy savings, just do a search for an energy survey or an energy audit. And what you can do is go through your house, and
Okay.
basically what you're doing is you're listing what in your house uses energy, and then you try to figure out which ones do you want to replace with better things, or which things can you figure out how to shut off or use less. For example, a simple thing, a
Gotcha.
cell phone charger plugged into the wall with no cell phone in it. The Department of Energy says
Mm-hmm.
we have enough of those plugged into the wall to be the equivalent of 7 power plants in the US. Okay. So if it's got a black
Oh
cube
my
on it,
gosh.
even if nothing's hooked to it, it's using energy,
Wow.
And so, like, one habit
Right.
I got into is I put a plug strip and I have my whole home entertainment center plugged into that plug strip. But instead of having that plug strip on the
Mm-hmm.
floor behind the cabinet, I've got it set up just like literally just what I do is I take the remote and I walk over to the TV, and on top of the TV I've got a dish, put the remote there, and then reach over to the left and flip off the breaker, and I've just turned off the whole entertainment center on my plug strip. And so it's not using any energy when I'm
Gotcha.
not using it. So it's training myself to be a habit, right?
Yeah, it's about
We don't
changing
want to.
habits. And I think
No,
for so many of us, we're so used to,
it's,
well, yeah.
it's so
Yeah, no,
hard.
I mean, I think that's fair. You're right. A lot of times we just don't want to, or because we've gotten accustomed. And, it's about changing a mindset and thinking, well, where is this power coming from? And I'm using this, even if I'm not
Yeah.
actually using what is using the electricity, and really
Yep.
starting
It's like
putting those things together.
I'm trying to think. I used to do this energy efficiency presentation, and it was like, let's see, change. It could be as simple. So it was like, change a light bulb, change your mind, change the world. I was just like, but
Nice.
mostly we talk about energy efficiency because that's like, buy this product, use less energy. We almost never talk about energy conservation, which is, how do I change my habits to use less energy? And I'm not the mindset like in the 70s where they're like, put a bunch of sweaters on and turn the thermostat way down. But I am of the mindset of like, let's
Right.
buy some really good quality light bulbs that use a lot less energy and I have a lot of light. Makes me happy. Um, but also of the mindset, try to have, one light bulb per person per room on kind of deal. So it's like good quality
Sure.
products, but also try to change my habits. Um, I mean, I grew up off
Right.
grid, so I tend to like go to bed when it's dark and wake up at light, which like right now, I shouldn't be waking up like this morning, Sunday morning. I'm on like this extended vacation. There should have been no reason for me to wake up at 6 a.m. at all. Just like,
Right.
yeah, I was just
The
like,
sun's awake, so
yep.
I'm
So
awake.
anyway, I got up, had a little food, and read a book, and just lounged around.
Well, that's a whole other topic when we start talking about circadian rhythms and how, our how we're biologically set up to do just that. And it's because we have all of this artificial light and
Well,
artificial things
yeah,
that
I
has
definitely
changed.
started
But
having a hard
that's
time
a whole
going to
other
bed when I
that's
would
a whole other
watch,
subject.
um, watch a movie or something. I found out that I pretty much need to like, I don't know, last half hour read a book or not have a screen time to go to sleep. So, yeah.
Yes. I have been a lot better about that. Not having my phone on me all the time, not having
Mhm.
so much screen time, and I feel better. And I think part of it is I'm not picking up on that vibration too.
Well,
I
it's
feel
Sunday
better. I
morning,
feel
so
clearer,
I
and
have
my
this
head feels
habit,
clear.
and I've been doing it for years. Sunday morning before noon is no technology. And because I don't really have a clock unless I look at my phone,
Okay.
I don't really know when noon is. And so today it happened to be like 1:30 before I like looked at the phone. Um, Sometimes it would be I'll look at it and it's 11 and I'm like, oops, I got another hour. But so yeah, I mean, this morning was no technology morning and just read and cooked and ate and you know clean 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 the
Which is
house and
also conserving
I don't
energy.
know, just I, I it really, I've always found it really helps me to, because I have lived off grid for many years, but I'm very much connected. Have always been. Even when I lived in the poorest county in Tennessee, didn't have a cell phone, but I had uh am what is it? Um Shortwave radio, so I could listen to radio stations all over the world. Amateur radio, so I could talk to radio stations, all
Right.
people. And then locally, we had CBs. So, yeah.
So did you always just embrace this lifestyle, or since you lived that way growing up, was there ever a part of you, or a time where you
Oh,
kind of rebelled against it and was like,
of
nope, I
course.
don't want to do this. I want to
There was
experience
like
this
one whole summer,
differently.
for example, that I like watched TV nonstop. Just like, just like, luckily where we lived, there was only like two channels then. So, um, but I don't know. Um, and probably the only aspect that I ever come across is I can't play Trivial Pursuit because it's all pop culture and I didn't grow up with any of that. Like I didn't watch movies or watch TV.
Oh,
I would,
okay.
just listen to the radio and, um, I know a lot of stuff about world because I, listened to the shortwave radio from around the world, but didn't watch TV. So didn't, so you'll be surprised how many jokes are
Interesting.
based on stuff
Yeah, I've got
people
that.
saw on TV. It's just like someone will say something and I'm like,
Yeah, that's a
okay,
very good point.
explain it. And they'll explain it. I was like, that's not funny. They're like, yeah, it is. You had to be there. So, so yeah.
Oh. Laura, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I've so enjoyed talking to
Yeah.
you.
It's
I've
like,
missed you, my friend. It has been many years since
it's
I've
really
seen your
fun
face.
that, I mean, I used to be embarrassed talking about, growing up, you know, but now it's like people want to do it. People are talking about, yeah, it's just like
Oh,
people
you're
want to
so
talk
in
about,
fashion
like,
now.
oh my God, you can food and you store, put stuff in the deep freeze and you like dry food and like, you know, like, like I, the,
It's
the other day someone was like,
yes, it's a whole
man, I've like
movement
been
that's
stuck inside
really
and I want some
happened.
greens. And I was like, what are you talking about? Your whole front yard. They're like, I made a smoothie and I was like, went out to the yard and I picked some plantains, some violets, some dandelions, some poke and put it in my smoothie. I didn't put tons because all that
Yeah,
stuff's bitter, but I got my green fix.
right.
So, all right.
What is the best way for people to get in touch with you if they're interested in solar? I know I'm gonna put the
Okay.
link up for your blog. But for people who are maybe looking for to convert into
My
solar
email
or
is
have
tech,
some questions, what's the best way to reach you?
TECH, at aessolar.com. Two S's, AES Solar. And yep,
Okay,
I've been almost 20. I never
gotcha.
thought this would happen that, you know, pe- what was it last Friday? We had this Solar Pioneer Zoom call, and it was like all these my heroes and mentors from all over the world, and like who've been doing solar 20, 30, 40 years, and we just got all on and I don't know, had a little party, talked about the future, and so yeah, it's like if you ever get a chance, there's a movie out there called Solar Pioneers, and so far it hasn't. Um, it
Okay.
probably won't ever be played in mainstream things, but they have small clips all over the internet, and it's a lot of good stories and history, and
Okay.
I don't know, it's the 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 ability to take sunlight and make electricity, the magic. I mean, Albert Einstein. Um, did you know he won the Nobel Peace Prize explaining it? Oh, is it Albert
I
Einstein?
did not know that.
No, I forgot. Oh well, I was getting too excited. Um, trying to think what year. Anyway, No, Albert Einstein was the. Yeah, but he was World War II, right?
Physicist.
I'm trying to think. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
it wasn't Albert Einstein. Man, I just completely forgot who it was. Um, it's like
That happens to me all the time. I'll know something, like I know my
I mean,
name, and then I'll just blank at the
He
most
wrote the paper in
inopportune moments. I
1905.
guess
Now I
maybe
remember
that's
that.
aging. I'm not sure.
And like this, trying to think who's the most famous scientist ever. Oh well. As soon as, as soon as we get
We'll
off
look it
this
up.
call, I'll
I'll look it
remember.
up and I'll put it
And
on the
usually,
notes.
like when I do these like solar presentations,
Of course.
it just completely comes in. At least I corrected my fupa. So, all right.
Yeah.
So you know what I say to
Thank you
everybody?
so much, or I really appreciate you.
Stay energized.
What?
Stay energized. Thank you so much.
Yes. Stay. I want to thank my friend R. Beck from AES Solar in Carbondale, Illinois, and a big thank you to everyone listening and sharing this podcast. Please go check out the I Am Facebook page. This is where I post show notes and would love for you all to share your own self-sufficiency stories. You can also leave me a message about the podcast in the Anchor app. So if you have a comment, a question, or suggestion for upcoming episodes, let me know. Thank you again. Much love to you all.